Hey, Composing Gloves here, and today we're going to be talking about simple meter in in MIDI land, music theory. So you got a piano roll or something, a MIDI editor, some kind of something, and now you're going to edit, and we're going to talk about what simple meter is, some of the implications of simple meter, like what is this simple meter junk? And this is something that you do use a crap ton, like moving between compound meter and simple meter, which are the two types of meters, is fundamental in rhythmic writing, especially in dance music. It allows you to do, whenever you do something like dun 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 dun, anything like that, or da 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 dun 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 da 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 dun 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 da 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 da. That is, those are all examples of moving using borrowed time. So we're taking time from another type of meter, from simple to compound, and we're using it. As you can see, these are very valuable rhythms, like they're everywhere. And so we need to understand how these work. So there's something called simple meter, which is what we're going to be talking about. So we understand there are 4 beats in a measure. Each one of these areas is essentially a quarter note. It gets 1/4 of the beat. And if we play it down, we could see that the subdivisions have already been made for us. These subdivisions are what determine if it is simple meter or complex meter or compound meter. So I'm not going to get into advanced meters as far as like things like 5/4, because we're just not going to run into that here. And this is principally used for dance music. However, if you really want to get more advanced later on, I may consider going into things like that. And you'll get the options that are available to you when we cover compound and borrowed time. You'll start to see sort of why you would choose meters like that. But here we've got a measure of 4/4, and our beat is right here. This is 1 beat, right? And it's shown by these dark lines. Here's a beat, measure bar, which is also a beat 1, beat 2, beat 3, da 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 da. And it's like, I just feel so masculine when I'm talking about the beat. So here we've got 1, beat 1, bang, measure 1. Well, if we could split this into half. That's now beat, that's by and. So we already talked about this. So there's 1 and. This is an example of simple meter now. Well, it's always been in simple meter, but simple meter is by definition a meter where you can break the beat up into 2 equal parts. So here we've got 1 and. So you might be saying, oh, okay, that's really great. Now, what if you wanted to, let's come over here to project, make it 3/4. So beats per bar 3, steps per beat 4. So it's 3/4 now. So we have 3 of these. It's still simple meter. Look at that. We can still do that. Oh man, bro. So that's pretty cool. Now, this is always going to be referred to as simple meter. There's other options for meters that I did not get into too much. I got into in the other series. We have things like 2/4. So we have 2 beats, and it can still be broken up into 2 equal parts. Then we have things like 2/2, where and man, it's so much more difficult to express here, but the half note gets the beat. And so what normally, okay, so let's go back to 1/1/2, right? So this is essentially our quarter note. If we do this, we just halved our quarter note. So our quarter note is now perceived as an 8th note. And there are 2 of these per measure. So you can see there's 2 of these, but our tempo will be interpreted vastly differently now. So let me real quick show you. So here's 4/4. So I covered this very nicely in the other series, but here's 4/4. So each quarter note so this duration represents a specific amount of time, right? And in music theory, it's a lot easier to express with note values. But here we play it and we'll see, observe how fast that is going. So, oh, okay, that's going pretty quick. Let's make it slower, and let's make it like 60 beats per minute. So, oh, there we go. So it's going like that. So that's our tempo, right? Now, if we were to make this, go into our options here, project options, and make this 2/4, what we have just done is it maintains the same amount of time. So there are 2 beats, but they cross at the same tempo. They're still the same. But if we make this 2, it will now cross at twice the speed, because what we've just done is we've halved the amount of length that's going to be there. Go watch my music theory video. This is turning into a mess, but as you can see, it's changed. I made a mistake. It's going to go through at half the value, but your quarter notes now will be perceived differently. So if we made this like steps per beat 8, if we went to 8, now watch this. it changes the speed. Even though we've maintained tempo, look at how much that's twice as fast. And so actually that's a factor of we doubled it twice. So it's a ratio of 2, I suppose. There's a truck driving by. So this is really, really a valuable tool for us in simple meter. So if you don't get that, go watch the quarter notes and half notes thing. Some people prefer to write in those different methods because they find them easier to think like that. And now you could see. So as long as we could break, so example in 2/2, it doesn't matter. We can still break our beat up into 2 simple pieces. So it is still simple meter. We still can have we can still do this quite easily. So that's the definition of simple meter. Now, the whole timing thing, again, what we've done is there are 4, but what was originally perceived as 4 is now perceived as 2. And so this has now been essentially halved. And if we do it, it's now been perceived as 8. And so it'll speed up as it goes through. So it's really weird to think about in this DAW. So I have to acclimate to thinking like this sometimes. Because the other way, I think, is much more intuitive, even though it's got other things that are weird. So, okay, this makes sense. So we've got this whole 4, 8, and we're able to move between these meters. And we know that 3/4 is still a simple meter because we can still break our things up into two equal parts. Now, what if we want to go to 5? I know I just threw a whole bunch of words out, but let's really quick just think about this for a second. So now we have 5 beats. But our quarter note, our beat is still 4. So we can still divide it into 2, which is okay. We've got 5 of these things. And I don't think it's reflected that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh yeah, it has. I'm looking at a beat. No wonder I was confused. Okay, so we have 5 now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How do you represent meter here? We could still divide it into 2 equal parts. As you can see, our beat. But now we have this thing where we can have 3 beats and we can have 2 beats that are separate. Is this simple or compound? And the answer is not simple. I mean, not easy to answer. The answer is simple in a strict sense. Because we can still break it down, it's still simple. But there's all these weird things that come along with this and this sort of an idea about meter. And I just wanted to present that issue to you, that's a thing. And 5/4 is actually quite a common rhythm. Most of the time when I used it because I wanted an extra beat, and usually I had a number of other issues. So you don't want to just go to 5/4 just because you need one more beat. Like that's a thing you could do, but things like fermatas and other tools would be used there. And the piano roll, it just wouldn't really exist. So you might write out, and in the piano roll you do a number of other things that are unusual, like you draw out notes because the sound will sound that long and you want it to die off. Or if you don't understand what I'm talking about, when you get into composition and making a track, you'll come across times when the length of the note is simply so that your sound will die off properly. In written music, it's just assumed that things like that will take place. Like the reverb will just go on. Like there's not an issue because you're playing it in a room. So that's simple meter. Now there was one other thing I wanted to show you about this that has escaped me for the moment. So I may just leave it there. But again, you could break it up into 2 equal parts. So just a quick recap, you could break it up into 2 equal parts. 3/4 is still a simple meter. 5/4 is arguably still a simple meter, technically. And that's that. So yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. Subscribe. Just want to make sure there's nothing else I want to talk about. 3/4, 4/4, 2/4. And the notes are all right where they, Oh, I remember the last thing I wanted to say. So I want to really quick just draw conscious attention to the idea now that you see all these things. We now know that we have different tempos, different meters. We have we're starting to recognize the implications of using different meters. So when you think of a melody like da na 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 na, like let's say that was the melody you thought of. When you write it out, you have a huge number of ways to represent that on here. You could change the tempo and half time and to be half of that and then write it as double time so it's perceived differently, or you could do vice versa. You could write it at you could write the tempo at a slow, I think I already said that. You could write it out slow and double the tempo. and it would be interpreted differently. You have eighth notes. You want to use that. What note gets the beat? How are you going to represent this? There's this translation that needs to happen. So how do you make this intuitively? Well, first, you should just really choose to sort of master a particular meter. Like 4/4 is probably the meter of choice. Is the meter of choice for learning. And so as you do it, you're going to be dealing with rhythms in 4/4. And then from there, you can branch off and sort of say, oh, this is out of 4/4. So if I want this rhythm, this is pretty close to 4/4. This is the difference. And then you can write out that new rhythm without any problems. This is how people could say, this is what this is going to sound like when they put it down. They're just like, oh, that's what that sounds like. They understand this so well that they're able to do that. And I could, like, I know what a majority of rhythms will sound like just because of my knowledge of rhythm. So I just wanted to bring conscious attention to the idea that a thing in your head and a thing on the piano roll are two things. There's all this translation in the middle, and I'm filling in all this stuff, all these different steps you got to go through to get to that. If you have any questions, let me know. Subscribe, and have a blessed day.
Peace hunt.